everybody, back with another Indiana Jones film review, and now we're at the point where I am super excited to do this one because it's one of my favorite films, but also definitely the best, arguably the best Indiana Jones film to this day. I think a lot of people would agree on that. Of course, you got those outliers who prefer Raiders, but honestly, this one is like peak Indiana Jones. It's like you got everything you need in this, and oh my god, I think I watched this before I even watched Raiders. To be honest, it's one of those few films that I remember watching with my father. I watched a lot of movies with my father when I was like a little kid, and as I know I've probably mentioned this before, but it's like a fun fact because Indiana Jones' real name is Henry Jones Jr., named after his father. My father named me after him just out of inspiration of this film. Because because of the junior thing, and my father's a super fan of Harrison Ford. That's why, like, when I go see Indiana Jones 5, I already bought the tickets, so it's me, my father, and my two younger brothers. We're all gonna go together as like a late Father's Day present, so we just treat them out to Indiana Jones 5 since it's the last one. We've all seen the previous Indiana Jones films. Don't know if my youngest brother ever watched it with him. I like to think he did at some point whenever it was on TV. But we're all gonna go out, have a nice time out, and watch the film. So, yeah. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe to the channel, youtube.com/talkativecarl. Check out my Patreon as well, patreon.com/talkativecarl. My Twitch as well, twitch.tv/talkativecarl. Always follow me, join me live, chat with me, so forth. You can check out my Twitter channel as well, where I most frequently be on, at Talkative Carl. And of course, my Instagram, my Odyssey channel, the links are in the description below. And if you haven't already, please send in your questions for my Hot Ones Challenge video that I'll be doing next month, in celebration of reaching my I'm close to reaching my 800 subscriber milestone, but I'm just like a few shy subscribers away. But anywho, once again, Harrison Ford plays Indiana Jones, famous archaeologist and professor. We got a young Indiana Jones played by River Phoenix, the late River Phoenix, who passed away from overdose in like the early 90s, and is the brother of Joaquin Phoenix. You should look up this guy because he comes from a very kind of tragic backstory. When he was like a young child, was involved in like a cult situation, and child molestation, that kind of thing. Is very tragic, but he managed to make something of himself. Despite being like a young actor, he still managed to achieve a fair bit in his life. Then I didn't know he was related to Joaquin Phoenix. We got Sean Connery playing Henry Jones Jr., a professor of medieval literature. We got Dehom Elliott playing Marcus Brody again. Alison Doty playing Dr. Elsa Schneider, Austrian art professor, and the love interest in this film. Allison had a nice working career in the film industry. More recently, if you've seen the movie RRR, I haven't. Everybody's giving the glorious reviews and all the other stuff, but apparently she was in that. So you might notice that same actress, where she one of her earliest films was in this. John Rhys Davis playing Salah again, and Julian Glover as Walter Donovan. We got Michael Byrne playing the Nazi Colonel Ernest Vogel. Anyway, this is like a nice little. First and foremost, I want to make a point. I want to include this as probably one of the best father-son relationship that I ever seen in a film before. There are some good ones, but I really like this one as far as the father-son dynamic. I'll get more in depth into it later on in the video, but I just want to make a point on that. I really like this relationship. I think one of the best partner pairings with Indiana Jones throughout before we even got into the 5th installment, the quadruple installments. This one's the best. Anyway, there's also great on, and this is directed by Steven Spielberg, mind you, and co-written by George Lucas. You get, in the 3rd installment, ironic, because the way they, had to set up in these installments is kind of weirdly wonky, because the second film is like a prequel before the first film. This third film, there's a little, hint at the Ark of the Covenant, as a little inside joke of the fact that, Indy, sees this, painting on the wall of the Ark of the Covenant, and Elsa asks, are you sure this is Ark of the Covenant? Oh, I'm sure. That was a little funny nod, and I didn't even think about it. I think many people probably saw it and picked up on it, but you watch a certain movie a hand number of times and you discover something new every time you watch it, kind of thing. But here you get a bit of the origin story of Indiana Jones, and I want to do a comic book review on a Indiana Jones comic at some point, because there was a TV show called Young Indiana Jones that was it Young Indiana Jones, or I like to think there was, but it wasn't very good. It didn't last very long. I probably only caught a couple of things, and it was terrible. But it wasn't a bad concept. I mean, getting a story, adventures of Indiana Jones and how he learned the stuff he learned, who were his mentors, and and how he acquired certain skills to be the way he is, and how he met Miriam and stuff like that. All things that we know from the mainline movies. This is 1912 here. Young Indiana Jones, also kind of scout troop thing, and you got this little tubbo kid that's it's kind of this is George Lucas I'm talking about here, because he literally has a character called Porkins in Star Wars, and I like to think he added this fat kid as some kind of Porkins type, because he's dumb fat and everything like that, and it's I I don't know. He looked like he's sweating up a storm. He's turning red like a raspberry while he's trying to huff it through the mountain range. And it's like, it's just like, wow, this is like something else. Sorry, it's not an endorsement thing or anything like that. I just had like a meal a couple hours earlier. So, young Indiana and his little partner spots these robbers who are for lack of a better word, just like, you know, like they're grave robbing, but they're mining through. They're kind of like, you know, the flip side to Indiana Jones's profession. And they're digging, this is in Utah, they're digging into this mountainside, inside this cave, where they find this crucifix. Once belonged to this conquistador named Coronado, who is an actual conquistador from the past, but the crucifix is like a fake thing. And then you get the line, "It belongs in a museum," from young Indiana. Even though museums, especially, you know, prior to like, let's say like mid 2000s, when they started to, museums are acquiring certain antiquities and all this art, statues, and, you know, antiques and all this other stuff from other countries around the world. And, you know, most have been, especially around this era, have ignoring, the country's sovereignty and laws to acquire certain artifacts to bring them to other countries' museums for research or payout, or just because that country is probably going through whatever strife or whoever the situation that might been befalling them at that point in time. It's like, oh, it has to be better in the British Museum or something like that. And now we have, like, you know, of course, laws in place where, like, you're, archaeologists and you want to go to Spain to dig in a particular land, you gotta talk with the local government, more than likely talk with like local tribes that might be around, let you know what they're doing, and then they're gonna be respectful and everything like that, and make sure everything's on the up and up. That is the law. You will be immediately arrested if you're caught pulling stuff like that. Nobody will play that, nobody should ever play that, but they drop the hammer down hard if you go raid into somebody's backyard. So Indiana takes the crucifix while these guys' back is turned. And by the way, one of them was like way too hype. I don't know what was the direction that he was given while filming, but he's like hopped over on cocaine or something. It's like, woo, yeah, woo, this is woo. It's like, yes, uber jazzed up. I was like, okay, yes, this is like a gold antique, and they're being paid a lot of money to dig into this spot and grab it. But they chase after Indiana, who gets on a horse, hightails it to a nearby train that's like carrying circus animals and all this other stuff. There's a train for the circus people. And he hops on and he falls through one compartment that housed the reptiles. And he lands into like a box full of snakes. This is where he gets his fear of snakes from. He like freaks the hell out, and like, hey, I get it. This is, it's not something you want to be around. I don't have like a fear of snakes, but I understand the fear of snakes. uh, 'cause he has a crippling fear. I won't say crippling fear because it doesn't stop him. Because in like uh Raiders, and he gets trapped in that little pit with Miriam, and it's like surrounded by snakes. He still is like, gets his wits about him and try to fend him off while he's trying to figure his way out. So it's not like a crippling fear, but it's there. Which goes to show, like, Indiana Jones's bravery, because bravery is still doing something despite you being afraid. So, one of the leaders of the robbers, is admiring, Indy's gumption. He falls into like the lion's compartment, and he picks up the whip. This is where you get like his idea to have like a whip on hand. Of course, he'd never used a whip before, and he ends up like, hitting himself in the chin. But Indy manages to escape, heads back to town, try to tell his father, and his father's not listening because he's like wrapped up in his little research with about like the Holy Grail, which will play a major part of the main story. Because his area of expertise is medieval history. So we soon discover that the local sheriff is, I don't want to say in cahoots per se with the robbers, but the boss that hired the robbers to search for this crucifix, gets the sheriff on his side, and they get the crucifix off his hands. And the leader of the robbers, we never get the man's name, but he tells Indy like, hey, you might have lost this time, but it doesn't mean you have to like it. So he gives his hat to Indiana, and that's where you get Indiana's iconic hat. And this, you learn a lot from like Indiana's like the way he do things, because how he was raised. He had like a quote unquote strained relationship with his dad, because his father really doesn't pay attention to him. In his father's mindset, which we learn later in the middle of the film, that he just gives him in his independence and it's like do his own thing. And now I'm thinking about it, I think it's kind of way like my father kind of sort of raised me and my brothers, because it's not like he's neglectful or anything like that. He steps in when he needs to, but it's like, as long as we know where we're at, if like, especially if we're going somewhere, or at least until like we get, like we all, because one of my brothers have like his own spot in ironically Indiana, and eventually I'll get my own spot, but when we was young kids, he like always want to make sure like, hey, where you going? Because he wants to know, make sure like he knows your whereabouts. Like if something happens, he'll know where to, like the pinpoint or the starting point. Or if we're like, when I visited like Mexico or Vegas, years ago, like I make sure I give him a call when I land, so he knows that I safely landed, that kind of thing. So he's present, but he's let us like, he's very lax. I don't say lax parenting, but you know what I'm trying to say. Like he's there. When Nia's and it's like want to talk to him about something, he's there, whatever like that. But he's not like a helicopter parent kind of situation. He just makes sure like we do what we need to do, be on straight and narrow, blah blah blah. And if he needs to, he'll definitely step in if we cross any lines, kind of thing. But I think Henry Jones Sr. kind of, in my eye, kind of took giving his son independence a little bit too far, where it's like, it's like, did I ever tell you what time you need to go to bed, or did I do this or nothing like that? No, I let you I let you make your own way. I taught you, what's the word he used? Self-reliance. And is I don't want to use the word nature versus nurture kind of situation, but Indiana points out about comparing the way he was raised compared to the other boys in the neighborhood when he was a child, how they were raised. And he sees, because I think both are not seeing from each other's point of view, in my opinion, but personally, I always thought Senior wasn't acknowledging his kid, whereas like his kid wanted his father present, and he put too much focus on his work, or at least it seems like his son thought in his mind's eye that his father cared more about people who've been dead for centuries more so than his kid, right, who's right there with him. And it's like he just wanted to spend time with his father. He wanted to have like just a nice chat with his father, kind of thing. And he feels like, like Junior doesn't think like his father cared, but not in a sense where it's like, oh, he's neglectful, or he hates him or anything like that. It's just like, when you just want to just like shoot the shit with him, it's like his father's too busy thinking about other ancient antiques and history and all the other stuff. Anyway, so we had like the most incredible transition I've seen in movies. There's been good ones, but this one's one of my, I always think about when you were trying to do a seamless transition, and this pulls it off flawlessly, where the lead robber puts the eye kind of hack on young Indy, and as soon as the young Indy lifts up his head, he transitions right into Harrison Ford later in the mid 1930s, and he's on his boat confronting the robber's benefactor. And one of my favorite lines in the movie, and after Indy gets caught trying to steal back the crucifix all those years later, because he'd never forgotten that, and he tells the guy like, it belongs in a museum, and the guy's like, so do you. And that always stuck with me all these years. One of my favorite Indiana Jones lines ever. But because they're on the Portuguese coast on this boat, and it's like a storm raging, and because of the high winds and the water bobbing and weaving the boat, Indiana Jones managed to escape, take the crucifix, and the boat ends up collapsing as Indy makes his way to a life preserver. And while back in the States, and I don't think he's been very good as a teacher, honestly, because how often does he spend time in the States teaching? And like, how often do subs come in because he out on an adventure in a different country for several days? That's what I was like, maybe like a comic book or something like that could easily go in depth with something like him in the States as a teacher, and just like teaching a class, about like certain things that, like, if you going over like a history of like the Hawaiians or something, and as he's going over like a mythological figure, Karen is like about this like certain crown or something or whatever, and while teaching how to excavate properly, dusting, and because as he states, 70% of all archaeology is spending time in the library reading, which other archaeologists, real life archaeologists, completely agree. Like it wouldn't be 70, probably be 80, but still relatively, yeah, that's correct. And it's like, yeah, you're going to spend most of your time researching. So, as he's going over like a certain thing, he can do like a flashback, detailing about the particular subject at hand, about like properly preserving an item you found, or how to properly dig. And then you flash back to as he's like properly trying to dig, and he's fighting other evil archaeologists, or Nazis, or any type of like bad guy of the era, or the area. It kind of coincides. You can still get your Indiana Jones action, but you get to see him actually teaching a class, and how and why is he a great teacher? Because from the movie's point of view, it seems like he's barely teaching, because teachers are supposed to be there like 5 days a week. But I know this is a university, so maybe it's slightly laxed. But how often do these kids get subs? Because Indiana Jones is not there. Because as soon as he comes back, he is bombarded by a bunch of students that have ungraded papers. And it's like, that might be super annoying. But later on, Indy gets picked up by some men who takes him to see this guy named Walter Donovan, this rich guy. And he presents Indiana with this slab with some Sanskrit on it. It's like half of it is kind of broken, but it's it detailing about finding like the Holy Grail. It's like a marker, and they need to find the other one to help locate this item. But Indy says, like, why don't you talk to my father? He's the expert in this kind of thing. Well, like, we did go to your father, but he went missing while on the search. So now Indy and Brody go together to Venice to meet up with Walter's contact, Dr. Elsa, who immediately gets interested with Indiana, and they start flirting immediately. And of course, she is a beautiful woman. But they go to this library that used to be a church a long time ago, but it was I forgot the word, renovated or repurposed to become a massive library. Once, because Indiana using this book that was mailed to him by his father, it's like a journal with all these pictures and notes and stuff like that, and he's following along the notes that's left by his father to find this area on the floor that's also a marker. It's like it's said in the classroom, like telling the kids, like, hey, archaeology isn't about like finding lost. It's about finding facts, not truths. X never ever marks the spot. There's no map to hidden cities or treasure, or buried treasure or anything like that. But here is a giant X on the floor, which is kind of like super ironic. I'm pretty sure once he gets back to the States, he gotta tell his kids, kids, remember last time I was here, I mentioned about X never marks a spot? Well, let's say 99% of the time, X never marks the spot. But that's that 1% chance. I think that would be a little bit more accurate. But I like that, and that was very funny and perfectly timed by Lucas and Spielberg. So uh, Jones and Elsa, you know, go. He makes a hole in the floor, and then he goes inside and leads into this tunnel where it's a bunch of like not methane, but another flammable kind of waters, because this place has been sealed for ages. As he points out, I think he said like 600 years, even before the Crusade started. So it's been like a while, but Venice is like got all these canals and everything like that. So there's a lot of underground pathways. Um, and this place is filled like rats and stuff, but they see all these, entombed skeletons, and they make their way towards the end where they find the second marker. And of course, Brody gets knocked out by these ancient order of what is it, like order of the cruciform sword that's dedicated to protecting the Grail, because you know uh you learn later that Hitler and his forces are trying to find these ancient artifacts, because he's like a very had like a very deep interest into the occult, anything that can enhance his power and influence, because he wants to like overthrow the world. So this ancient order is not too dissimilar to like Knights Templar kind of people, and not like the Knights Templar, the evil bad guys from Assassin's Creed games. This is like, I don't even know, they even qualify as like technically bad guys in real life. The Knights Templar, well, I like to say they used to be a thing, because it was kind of like I think it was some kind of documentation about them being around before, but eventually they was stamped out kind of thing. But who's to say that they don't exist in some shape or form to this day? But the leader of this this little group that found Indy, named Kazim, go chases after these two, go on this boat chase, and they finally corner Kazim, and Indy asks him like, why you try to kill him? Why you try to kill us? Did you kill my father? He's like, no, I didn't kill your father. Like, I'm part of this order. I'm trying to protect the Grail. And Indy says like, I don't care about the Grail. I just want to find my father. And so Kazim is like, okay, then I wish you good luck on your journey. Your father is in this castle in Austria. But it's like, you knew this whole time? It's kind of iffy, because I don't know. One of my issues I have with this is like, how much does this guy know? And it's fair to say that this is his son. You could have just like walked up to him at any point and tell him about what's what, because you seem to know more than Indy does, definitely. So they make their way back to the hotel, and Indy discovers Indy and Brody realize about a certain piece of the puzzle that they didn't have, because now they had like both markers. But Indy gives him a couple of pages off the journal to hand to Brody, so he can find Salah in Egypt and hang out with him until he finds his father, because things are getting a lot more sketchier than he initially realized. uh, him and Elsa soon discover that their rooms have been ransacked, and that's when they get like busy. Only after she's like shocked that he didn't tell her about his father's journal that he had it, and it's like he tells her like, I didn't know you, and that's fair. And it's like I didn't know you from a whole long while. I only met you like a couple of hours ago, but you want to talk about like, oh, I don't trust you. And it's like, shut up, lady. But then they end up getting busy because she liked his little brash nature. And they later on that night they go to this castle, and this leads to my favorite scene, and it makes me laugh every time I see it, where he takes Elsa's hat and he's making up some kind of like I forgot what he called it, a shawl or something like that, and he's walking inside with Elsa, and it's like talking in this Scottish accent, and talking with the butler. It's like, is this tapestries? It's like, and like the whole entire scene is like makes me laugh. The butler's like, yes, we have many tapestries, but if you're Scottish law, then I am Mickey Mouse. How dare he? And smack the hell and knock him out. It's like, I love that scene. That makes me laugh all the time. And just like Elsa's little plastic, I don't want to say plastic smile, but she's just like the ends a little smile while she's wearing Indy's hat, like pretending to be his assistant and everything like that. The entire scene, just to get them to get inside, is just hilarious. They play comedy so right in this. But they discovered this castle is being run like took over by some Nazis, and Indy goes through a window to takes a whip, and then Tarzan his way into another room across the way, and gets knocked on upside the head with a vase by his father. And you can see the relationship, like kind of show not tell kind of situation where Indy thinks his father is like worried about his head after he hit him upside the head with a vase, but he soon realized like, oh, it's like, oh, he was worried about the vase because he thought it was like a true antique, but it's actually a fake. But it's going to show like the different. They're both have the fields of historical, like in the field of Indy's an archaeologist. He's more of like a historian, but they in a kind of field. But Indiana takes a little bit more of an actor role than what realistically archaeologists would not be doing. But here comes some soldiers, and it's like like Dr. Jones. They both say yes. Another one is really funny, perfectly timed. But they want to know where the book is, and Senior is like laughing, like, you think my son would bring that book all the way over here? But then it's like, Indy's like, he didn't mean to, but it's like he didn't know exactly, that he shouldn't have brought the book with him. But it's like he sent it away just to get out of the hands of these guys. And he hates being called Junior because kind of like because it kind of sets him off, because Jones Jr. is because Indiana, he's named after the dog that he had as a kid. And you see like a snippet of the dog as young Indiana Jones was running inside his house. You see a snippet of the dog, and he loved that dog. It's kind of like a defiance of his father, because like, you did not pay attention to me. Like he changed his name. You know, he named himself after the dog that he had like apparently a better attachment with as a kid than he did his father. He modeled himself after the lead robber that he came in contact to as a kid, that helped shape the look and name of Indiana Jones as we know him. Showing that like part like a more utter defiance of his father, because maybe outside of the field of study, he tries to distance himself from any kind of like same comparisons or similarities to his father. So when anytime he calls him Junior, it really kind of sets him off because he does not really like recall that. Especially since he's like a grown man at this point. But Senior is like shocked how Indy is so nonchalant about just murdering people. It's like, oh my God, look what you did! Look what you did! And it's not real, like, because he doesn't know his son like that. Because that's the downside of giving your kid too much independence, where they often doing their own thing. You would not, if something happens and they doing something and then like somebody brings it to your attention, like, it's like, I don't know you. No, because you don't spend time with your kid and never sit down with them and actually talk. Like, what interests do your kid have? Or like, what kind of similarities do you share? Like, that kind of thing. It's kind of important for a father to like know your kid. No matter how old they get, it's like every once in a while you should like see what your kids are into these days. I remember one of my fondest memories with my father, because I have like a good handful, but one of my favorite ones is when because of course many of you guys know, if you follow me along for quite some time, one of my favorite animes is Yu-Gi-Oh! And when I started getting the card game, my father was sitting in the living room one time, and he asked me about it, and I was teaching him the rules of the game. Now, of course, I wasn't dumb. Like, I knew he probably like his interest of the stuff doesn't go that high. There's only a few cartoons that we actually he saw with me and my little brothers when we was young, but it kind of still kicks me to this day, because I was telling him about how the the gameplay works, like about like Exodia pieces, and like you gotta have it all in your hand, you automatically win the game. If not, well, it's like you gotta figure out some other way to beat the opponent, have 2,000 life points, get to the first one, get to 0 loses kind of situation. And I told him about like you can watch a couple episodes and what time they show up. Now, of course, this is like way earlier in Duelist Kingdom. And of course, Duelist Kingdom arc was the shows still getting their footing on how like certain things work. Because early Yu-Gi-Oh! They kind of BS around a lot. When it comes to how certain games, certain cards do certain things. Is kind of like D&D of that time, where it's like, giant ultimate great moth, every time he flaps his wings, it spreads poison, so your monster loses 100 points of attack and defense, each round kind of situation. Of course, doesn't really do that, but over the years, the Konami, who makes these card games, starts repurposing some of them to do certain things that you saw from the show. There's a few examples. Like more recently, like you remember Sizu Istar, the sister to the villain of Duelist Kingdom, not Duelist Kingdom, Battle City Merrick. She had certain cards that did certain things in the show, but the cards at that time that came out that was similar did not do that. As a matter of fact, a couple of them were like normal cards as opposed to having like effect abilities. More recently, those cards been repurposed to now do what you would have saw in the show at that time. But when my father was checking out a couple of episodes, it was like one of those filler stuff, and it's like, oh my god, it burns me, like, because I didn't know at that time. And it's like, God, I wish I didn't have to go to school so I could actually show him some of the episodes so you can see how cool it actually is. But at the time, I didn't know what filler episodes were, and how annoying they are sometimes. Anyway, I'm off tangent here, but you catch my drift. It's like, a parent should get to know their kid and see what kind of interest they have. And especially when every time they get a little older and older, see what new interest they acquire over the years. Anyway, it's soon discovered that also is working for the Germans. But in her mind's eye, she isn't like a true believer. But it's like, because she just wants to discover like certain prizes, and like I guess the Germans is kind of like an easier way to get stuff done without any kind of the red tape or whatever. I'm not sure, but she seems believe on some level of what they believed in, but it stopped short of watching them during the it was around that time when during like the book burning things, and she's like crying because she still is a scholar at heart and loves history, and somebody who loves history and like a scholar, watching somebody burn books breaks your heart. And don't freaking burn books. And I know that's been like a hot topic in the past couple of years at this point, because the Germans at the time burned anything that was preaching about democracy or liberty, was against Germany, or if it was even written by somebody of Jewish descent, or if it's like any kind of lewd content inside, where it's talking about like sex or anything like that. So like the Kama Sutra would have been burned immediately. But and of course, like in recent years, you hear about people like burning books or banning books from libraries or schools, and it's like, because I remember it used to be a thing when like Harry Potter was like starting out, becoming like popular. A bunch of like, negative Nancy mothers out there who thought like, oh, it's worshiping like the occult or something like that, and so it's like we don't want to affect our kids, blah blah blah. It's not that too dissimilar how like certain parents back in the early 90s was reacting to like Mortal Kombat game, because they thought like, oh, is this promoting gratuitous violence, and they just have too much time on their hands, and it's too many busybodies. If you don't like a particular book of whatever content it has, you don't have to freaking read it. And I know, it's like, I'm not a parent or whatever like that, but reading is as to quote Henry Jones Sr. in one particular scene, as he's telling like this German colonel, it's like folks like you should be reading books instead of burning them. You might learn something like that. And it's like, reading is good for you. uh, from Dr. Seuss to like Karl Marx. Uh, you know, reading is fundamental. Reading is, great to expand your mind. Uh, you don't have to like every book, or you don't have to agree with whatever context the book holds. You just, if a school is carrying the book, don't ban it all together. Just say like, hey, I don't want my child, as his parent, I don't want my child reading this particular book or whatever. But of course, kids will always find a way to do whatever it is that their parents are forbidding them to do, because that doesn't help. It's like, it's like reverse psychology. You tell a kid not to do something, they're gonna make them want to do it even more. But it's all about personal responsibility. Don't like force your beliefs on anybody else. This is my take on the situation. Like, there's many books that like I enjoy, and there's some like I don't really care for. I just don't want to read it, or I don't have any interest in it. I'm not going to force anybody to ban it because I don't, agree with certain things. There's plenty of books written by, right-wing extremists or even like racist people. I just don't want to. I won't read it. I don't care. If I have a kid and he's talking about like his teachers say the book they're reading is something that like, hey, that I personally agree with, I'll talk to the teacher themselves like, hey, can you exclude my kid? You teachers, part of your little curriculum or anything like that, because hopefully things don't get too politicized any more than it already is. But hey, because personal opinion, I think like when it comes to the government stuff, at least like certain institutions like teachers or schools, they should be neutral. I don't care if the teacher is trans or a cis male or cis woman or whatever. I don't care about that. I just try to remain neutral as you're going in and teaching children, because they if you're 5 or 10 years old, they don't need to be learning about like non-binary individuals. That kind of stuff you lead to higher in education like high school or college. Just remain neutral and keep that kind of stuff. Like, of course, don't teach them like the hate or anything like that, but just like remain true to the facts of the lesson plan. But that is my take on it. But yeah, don't ban books. Definitely don't burn books. Whether you agree with a particular author or like whatever content it is or not, leave them alone. Books are like an important part of one of the best things humanity, created when we started learning how to write and read. So yeah, leave the books alone. In fact, it's like, this is really quick. Like, I have like several books over here. Like, it's a couple of psychology books, about like certain, superhero characters, like, Batman Psychology, A Darkest Stormy Night, written by Travis Langley. As like part of several books, where he's involved in that talk about like Star Wars or the Supernatural TV show or Star Trek, Game of Thrones, that kind of thing. And then I got a bunch of Edgar Allan Poe stories. A Christmas Carol is one of my favorite stories. Alice in Wonderland is another of my favorite stories. Those the books that like I've read over the years. So yeah, one of my favorite books. And just in case you are interested in knowing like kind of favorite books, but leave a comment below. Let me know what favorite books that you enjoyed reading over the years. Anyway, so I just found out that Elsa is a sympathizer. It turns out she also had like a thing with the father, and it's kind of gross because it was it's like you don't want your father and son being Eskimo brothers. That's just gross. But they's like, oh, there's a couple of contents missing out of this book, and it's like, must have gave it to Brody. Don't worry, we'll find them. And I love the line from Indiana Jones, and it's like the funny polar opposite of what's going on realistically makes it all the more awesome. Where it's like, not Fat Chance. Marcus knows, every, at least several different languages. He has, context from here to like, to the Middle East and blah blah blah. And it's like he'll blend in perfectly. And then of course you see like Marcus, in Egypt looking for Salah, and it's like he cannot speak a lick of their language. And of course he's like, so, it's like, the whole polite British attitude. Excuse me, like, anybody knows English, by the way? Maybe a little bit of Greek. It's like the guy is a charmer. He's cool. Then he meets up with Salah and everything like that. But after trying to escape from a bunch of like German soldiers, he ends up, Salah tucks him away. He thinking it's like a doorway into a building, but it turns out to be like a truck that's driving away. And you look at the extras, these I'm not chic, but these people in fez. One of them I think is wearing a turban, but another one's wearing like a fez. I know, but as Salah's back is turned, they lift up the doorway, and like you pay attention to them, they just go. And like Salah just sees him, one of them, the one with the fez, close the door and walk back around and back into like a huddle. And it's like you see him doing that, and it's like you don't run. First of all, he's not trying to run after the truck, but understandably he's heavy set, so he's not going to get very far. But you saw the guy who closed the door. He doesn't like go over like, hey, what, like, where's that truck going, blah blah blah. It's like, but he just goes like, and it's like, I don't know, it's like, it's not a big deal, but it's like sometimes like I notice here, like I said, every time he watches this, you notice something different, and it's like, wow, that's something you should like stop immediately, because it's not like he pretend to go in a huddle behind your back. You saw him, go away from the door. So it's like you should have. I'm just saying, it's kind of weird. It's like you should have stopped him. I'm nitpicking here because it's a great movie, but as the Jones boys are trying to get out of their bindings, using a lighter, but the senior dropped it on the floor. It causes this big fire, and then they hop towards like the fireplace. Turns out to be a hidden passageway to another bunker on the other side, where the German soldiers are doing their little spy network, crap. And so they make their way out of their bindings, and taking like a bike and trying to escape from these soldiers. And then the senior is telling him like, we gotta go, telling his son that we gotta go to Berlin. It's like, no, we gotta go to this other place, because that's where Brody is. We gotta go save him because people are after him. It's like, well, my book is in Berlin. We gotta get that. Because there's more important context in it than just the map. So you see them having like a little bickering here, because they keep mentioning about the mom, and that's another thing where it's like you make a comic book or something like that, you get more in depth with Indiana's mom and what was she like. But I kind of wish they kind of expanded more about that, but it's more so the father and son relationship here. Because we didn't even in the flashback, we didn't get like no indication about the mom. because clearly she was around long enough for Indiana to remember her, and knowing the father's I don't want to say obsession, but the interest he had with the Grail and medieval history and stuff like that. So they go to Berlin. Indiana takes a soldier, puts on disguise, and sneaks in to find Elsa. She thinks he's here for her. It's like, this girl's super delusional. But he's there only for the book, and he just leaves her there. She doesn't squeal, so she has some minute of morals, but she has her own little self-interest, but she just more so probably just in love with Indiana. But they make their way on the first blimp out of the German area to some friendly part of the country so they can meet up with Brody. But then the colonel sneaks on board. Well, not sneaks on board, gets on board. Indiana spots him, takes on a waiter's costume, throws him out of the blimp before he casts off, and everybody's looking like, and you get another iconic line like, "No ticket." And everybody starts flashing their tickets like, "Oh my god!" I was like, "You're taking it so seriously with these tickets." Then you get this one of my favorite scenes. It's like Spielberg probably had like the best film where they got like just like a moment of downtime where people actually talk and you're so engaged in what they're talking about. One of my favorite one of my other favorite films of his, Jurassic Park, where you get the iconic dinner scene or lunch scene where they're just talking about like the efficacies of bringing dinosaurs back into the modern world, which I will cover Jurassic Park at some point down the line because it's another great scene, more so because of recently the daughter of Hammond, the actress who played his daughter. I don't know if it was on TikTok or wherever, but you can look it up because it happened fairly recently, where she recreated the iconic scene where she's holding a spoon full of Jell-O and she's staring intensely and frighteningly into the camera because of the raptor is like about to sneak into the room because you see like the silhouette of the raptor, and she recreates that scene and like, she looks pretty good. I hope she's still acting because she was really good. It's like the Hammond children and Short Round and John Connor from Terminator 2, easily the best movie kids that I've seen. And there's been like so many crappy movie kids, and not the kid actors or whatever that's going on behind the scenes or outside the film that they got into that turned their life upside down or whatever like that, but just like the performers themselves. Those children that I listed are like, honestly, in my mind's eye, the best movie kids I ever seen, because they behave like real kids, they talk like real kids, not doing any gimmicky 90s speak to try to relate to wherever the kids are of a particular era. No, they just behave like just kids. Anyway, and it's like this scene where Indiana talks with his father, and it's like, I just wish you behave like all the other fathers growing up, and like it's cool, but also like speaks to like the mindset of, because it's kind of like the dad is going through like a kind of a journey himself, but it all comes to a head in the end. But as Indiana's trying to air out his grievances, and so Henry was just, it's like fine, I'm here now, what do you want to talk about? And he just, and like Sean Connery, phenomenal actor, always been like a phenomenal actor. He's one of the best James Bonds ever. But he just stares just blankly like, like I love like Indiana's reaction. It's like I can't think of a single thing. It's like, what are you complaining about then? I was like, oh my god, it's like this guy is, I want to say he's dense, but it's like, read the room. Your kid just want to share a moment with you. It's like, without talking about like work, you just like, just connect a bit. It's just like, but he's not like, let's get back into it. And he goes over about like his research about like these 3 trials, leading towards the Grail. It's like, only the penitent man will pass, walk in the name of God, and I forgot what the third one is. It was all about like a leap of faith kind of situation. So they noticed like the blimp is turning around because I guess the German airspace is getting like radio in about the situation. So the Joneses sneak onto one of the planes, kind of like a life raft, but a plane, where because they're being followed by like some German planes to like steer them the blimp, but the Joneses get shot down, and through a series of tricks, they take down these planes, and you get to see like Jones Sr. really show his stuff by utilizing like some seagulls to flat in the direction of one of the planes, cause him to crash. So this gives like Indiana a smile, the same way he kind of almost like the same way the guy he idolized when he was a kid smiled at him, where it's like the show of admiration and being impressed. And it's like, wow, like I never saw my father like take action like that before. He actually is pretty dope. That's how I read it, because like his father always seems like he's just interested in studying. He's never really like taken some kind of active role in this thing, even though how much of an active role is archaeology. So they meet up with Sala. They eventually find Brody in the clutches of the Colonel, Walter, and Elsa. And so they also get intercepted by the Order of the Crucifix. I was going to call it Order of the Crucifix. I keep forgetting the actual name. Crucifix something. But Kassim gets like, taken down in the process as he's trying to stop these people from reaching like after his sultan or whomever, like prince or whoever, who's supposed to be their ruler, is taking like bribes from these people, and just a glorified money grubber who doesn't believe in the same thing they're believing. So they take it upon themselves to stop these people. The colonel ends up dying after Indiana steers like a tank over the edge, while Elsa and Walter heads towards this temple. I forgot what that temple's name is. Al-Kazna, at Petra, Jordan. An actual place, but the inside is like, I don't know how similar the inside of the place is, really. But I doubt it's like that. I doubt it's anywhere similar to what is shown in the movie. But the people that Walter is trying to send in to try to find the Grail couldn't make it past the first trial. Each one keeps getting beheaded. So they end up mortally wounding Jones Sr. to get Jones Jr. to go through the trials. And Jones are understanding what he has to do. He, the penitent man will pass, so he kneels so that way he avoids these blades that swing by. Then walk in the name of God, so there's these little steps, each one marked with these grooves on the floor, each one, or tiles, I'm sorry, that's marked with a different letter. And walk in the name of God, you gotta walk in God's name, so Jehovah. But in the Latin alphabet, Jehovah starts with an I. So he walks in each letter that spells out Jehovah in Latin. And then the third trial was pretty much like a leap of faith. So cool trick of the eye till this day is really, really, really good, where he takes a leap, not actual leap, but he steps forward and you realize there's like a pathway that's kind of camouflaged. Not sure how that is even works at all. Because as soon as you walk through, maybe at first glance, you probably don't notice it. But after probably like a few turns here and there to look around, you probably notice the edges of the pathway or something like that, or the underneath of the pathway, where it's like a little bit more rocky stalactites. Or not like full-on stalactites, but like the formations of small ones, like these clumps of rock beneath. So he steps forward and he sees this ancient knight sitting there, who's because of the Holy Grail allowing him to like live for a very long time, even though he doesn't remain young for some reason. And he mentions to Indy there's like these array of different goblets and cups on this table, and there's like a fountain where it's supposed to, where it's with water, and the Grail is supposed to be the one that Jesus Christ used at the Last Supper, and also the same cup that supposedly captured his blood after he was crucified on the cross. So it's completely blessed, and it's supposed to bestow long-lasting life and healing capabilities. So, and look, because I didn't notice at first, after so many times watching this, that after when he starts the second trial, you look behind him, you see like Walter and Elsa just peering through the back, following along. Because growing up, when I watched this film, you didn't notice them until they start walking in after the third trial. So they've been following along little by little behind Indy. And before Indy get a chance to warn the knight about like certain people following him, here they come. And I think this is Elsa's way of turning on Walter by selecting a goblet for him. So she hands him this gold goblet. He pours water into it, drinks from it, and because he chose poorly, it rapidly ages him to a skeleton. And like great effects, honestly, to this day. And he crumbles to dust, and he obviously has some kind of pin, like a clothespin with the swastika on it, and it crumbles to the ground. And it's like, I always thought, at some point, centuries from that point in time, somebody will be digging through this particular area and they find this pin. They're going to probably misinterpret what's going on in this exact time and place. You're going to lead future archaeologists to misinterpret what might be going on in this moment. Thought that was like kind of like, I want to say an oversight, but you can't help but think about something like that. But Indy finds the proper cup because obviously, if you learn any kind of stories from Jesus Christ, he came into a marketplace on a donkey, as if I recall correctly, and clearly he's one of the most humble individuals in our history. Depending on how you believe him being like the actual son of God or not is kind of irrelevant. Well, I won't say not I won't say it's irrelevant, but it's just like he was a humble person and behaves like true and good, and so, like I said, humble. So he wouldn't have some opulent thing to drink from. He will have something humble, something a carpenter would probably use. So Indy takes it, drinks from it. He chose correctly, wisely. So he makes his way back. He takes some water, gives it to his father. He heals, but Elsa tries to take the cup away from the sacred seal, try to take it outside of the temple, which they was instructed not to. The whole temple starts collapsing. Elsa falls. Despite, and here's kind of funny. She's trying to reach for the grail that's like on the edge as the floor is trying to collapse, and Indiana's trying to tell her like, Elsa, let it go, and you can't help but think about Elsa from Frozen, like, let it go, that kind of thing. Check out my Frozen spoiler review, by the way. This is up on the channel. But she falls to her death trying to reach for the cup because she only cares about like the prize, as Henry Sr. mentions. And Indiana is nearly about to fall, but his father catches him and he's trying to reach for the cup because trying to get his father's approval, thinking like, oh, this cup will give me his approval because I never seem to get, no matter what I did or accomplished, it seemed like I never got that from my father, and this will finally cinch it for me. But you hear, and this is where like the arc that finally comes to a head for Henry Sr., where he stopped calling him Junior and he's like, Indiana. He calls him by the name that he wants to go by. He says, Indiana, let it go. And it shows that his father is willing to let it go because he only cares about his son. Like, his son is definitely is more important to him than anything he's ever researched or what he studied or whatever like that. Nothing's more important than his child. And no matter how old he is, I will I will be there for my kid. So he rescues his son and they leave out from the temple. And then Brody, Indiana, Henry, and Sala hop on their horses, camels, and ride off into the sunset. And that ends The Last Crusade. Incredible film, one of my favorite films, but definitely the best Indiana Jones movie to this day, at least until I see what Indiana Jones 5 has to give us. But as of right now, still the better one. But next Thursday, of course, I'll be seeing Indiana Jones 5 on Thursday afternoon, but once I get back, once I get back, I'll be reviewing Indiana Jones and the Crystal Skull, which arguably is not good, but maybe after so many years, I'll point out some better stuff that we probably wasn't too close to point out at that time, but maybe I'll point out some certain things, and of course talk about the Shia LaBeouf of it all, but we'll get to it. But next Saturday, I will be covering my spoiler review of Indiana Jones 5 then, which will wrap up my Father's Day month review. Then next month we'll start with the Independence Day movie month. But anyway, If you've seen Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, leave a comment below. Let me know what you think. What's your favorite books? What's your favorite scene from the film? What do you think about the father-son dynamic between Henry Jones Sr. and Jr.? Oh, also, I will also be covering Jennifer Lawrence's film No Hard Feelings, because I really want to check that out because it seems very interesting. Nice little funny raunchy film that it doesn't seem like we've ever gotten it in a long while, and I want to try to get out of that superhero movie stuff, take a break from that and watch something outside of that realm every once in a while, and bring you guys something. So I might see it on that Saturday, and then as I come back, I'll review 2 movies in once that day. So anyway, I'll see you all in a little bit. We'll be streaming just one thing here, which is Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel. Unpack some new cards and play some solo mode and a couple of online matches. And this time by tomorrow afternoon, I'll be starting my FF16 walkthrough, so look forward to that. So anyway, I'll see y'all soon. I'll have this posted on YouTube in a little bit. So take care and have a great weekend. Peace.